Alright, so back to this first Omari video that I made in a hot minute. Again, I've been busy with the Violet Evergarden videos, but now that those are done, right, again, I can actually get back to getting these Omari videos, and I have a decent amount to make. Again, I like I said, I plan on making one for each character, so that's 6. Again, right, and then kind of just, again, going over their Omari version, kind of doing a compare contrast how the change impacts the story, and then also which one I think is overall, I guess, better. But that's like very subjective. So, but pretty much it's just going to be a comparison. But these should also be shorter, maybe like 10-15 minute videos. So, but that's the 6 there, and then eventually I'll do, to kind of tie it all up, you know, wrap it all up, I'll do a Omori like mod speculation predictions video. So, or Omari. So, I don't know when that shit's coming out. You know, maybe it never does. Maybe it comes out in 2026, but I'll still make the video on it, because once I'm on, like, a subject, I need to get everything out regarding it. So, that'll be kind of the culminating Omari video that I make. But beyond that, right, I guess just let's get into it. So, again, right, and as I explained, as you can kind of tell by the title, you know, we're looking at one Omori character in this video, Omari, right? And then what better character to look at, or to, you know, look at, right, than, you know, the main character, right, of at least the modded game, and that being Mari, right? Or not modded game, that's for the game, but the AU, and that being Mari, right? Again, I was debating whether to start off with Mari or Sunny, but because obviously it would have been one of those two, but I figure since the focus is more so on Omari rather than Omori, right? I mean, I already did pretty much a character analysis for almost every character in Omori, so it's like, again, right, for Omari, yeah, I figure since that was the main focus, it made sense to start off with Mari, again, right, as opposed to Sunny, since she's the main character in that AU, since she takes Sunny's place, right? So at least in terms that we can get into it. So first things first, right? Again, Mari in Omori, right? Her character in Omori. Again, looking at that and what's that like, right? So I'll say again, also first things first, I already made a video on that, and it's actually, again, what kind of person was Mari? It was actually a relatively recent video. I think I made about like a week, maybe week and a half to like 2 weeks ago. It was a more recent video. And again, I actually, in that video, you know, honestly, I might not even talk about Mari in Omori, or like Mari from Omori there, because I pretty much do exactly that in that video, right? I guess the big thing that I mentioned or noted is, I think a lot of people, it's weird, because obviously we see Mari portrayed kind of, again, you know, as this like perfect older sister in the dream world. But it's also something to where Aubrey in the dream world is portrayed to have a crush on Sunny, right? So that raised the question of, we know that that's simply from Omori's perspective, and likely from the guilt and trauma that he's feeling for what he did. So he portrays her in that light as sort of some weird, like, symbol of, like, respect or something, right? Or some weird sign of respect. But it's something to where we obviously know it's not truly the case in reality, or that was actually the case. But it's also something to where I think people go too far in the opposite direction, or too much in the opposite direction, and they want to say, like, oh, Mari was this terrible, horrible person. She was a perfectionist, and she was a manipulative of Sunny, right? I don't think that's the case again. And basically what I said in that video was I looked at Mari more so as just kind of inconsiderate. Like, that's how I describe her, between her kind of, again, you know, making Sunny practice, right? Again, practice when he didn't want to. I had canoned as that was she broke the violin. We don't actually know who did. Again, that's not something that's revealed or made clear there. So again, my thinking was that she broke it because she maybe finally realized, you know, what that Sunny, you know, didn't really want to do that, right? While also not realizing that Sunny, you know, values more the time he's spending with her more than whatever they're practicing, right? So, and then also the fact that she kind of uses their friend group to go on dates with Hiro. At least that's what it just blatantly seems like there. So, at least in terms of that, right? What that comes down to is that what I view is that she's more like inconsiderate, right? I still think she's this good, you know, like, loving, caring older sister. But I don't think she's perfect, like, is portrayed in the Dream World. I think, if anything, she's just kind of inconsiderate towards Sunny's wants and feelings. She tries her best in, again, you know, does her best and wants the best for Sunny, but she doesn't really take into consideration, I guess, what he wants is a good way to put it, right? It's kind of about what she views what he wants, as opposed to just blatantly what he wants, right? So again, right, but obviously what that comes down to is we don't know for sure, because that's the thing, we never actually see her, right, except in, like, the flashbacks, but again, and the photos as well, which portray a pretty good picture of her, like, portray her in a pretty good light. So it's something to where, again, in terms of that, right, we really don't have an answer to what she was like. That's simply just my interpretation, kind of what I gathered from the game. So that's what I'm rolling with. That's Mari, right? That's Mari's character from Omori. So with that out of the way, we can get into probably the meat and potatoes, right? The big, what's it called? You know, the big part, like, again, you know, the part that I want to get into, right? And that's Mari from Omori. Or, Jesus Christ, I'm fucking up. Mari from Omari, the Omari AU. Now we can get into Mari and that AU and what she's like there. So I'll say is that, first things first, right, I guess at least prior to the incident, you know, her interpretation can pretty much be completely the same, right? I know that, again, and it depends on, I guess, how you view the incident as playing out and how you view it as playing down, or, like, going down. If you view it in either, like, let's say, I'd say if you view the incident in the burial lights, right, where you'd say after, you know, I guess Mari pushes Sunny down the stairs, she and Hiro go bury him, I'd be willing to say she's more perfectionist, manipulative there, right? You know, cover her own ass, and then, again, go into headspace for 4 years. That's what I'd say. And it kind of, again, it depends on how the incident goes down. That's kind of what shapes her character there. But if she calls, like, let's say, the ambulance, right, you know, then I'd say she's probably more so just inconsiderate, like how, again, I went over earlier. Even if you go into, like, the alternate incident, like I mentioned, where they end up, or Sunny ends up drowning in the lake, not Mari throwing him in the lake, but they get in their argument on the pier, it breaks, and then Sunny drowns there, right? I'd say, again, that's also just more inconsiderate of her, and I even linked the video in the description for that, right? But I'd say, again, you know, kind of her character in that AU, or in the Omari AU specifically, is more so shaped by how you view the incident and it going down. Obviously, since the mod isn't out yet, you know, the Omari mod, we don't have, like, I guess, quote-unquote, an official, like, source to go off of. It all depends on kind of your interpretation. Again, I liked the alternate incident interpretation. Again, it kind of defeats the purpose of, or kind of like the whole reasoning or idea behind the AU in the first place being, oh, what if they just switch spots? What if the one change being Omari pushed Sunny instead of Sunny Omari? How would that impact things? How would that change things, right? And then that's something to where it's like, again, right, as opposed to them getting to the argument on the pier in the alternate incident. But that's, again, I still prefer that. I think that's better. But even if you go with, again, you know, just the actual incident, depending on her reaction, whether it's burial or ambulance, again, I made the whole video on that. That, again, kind of determines, I guess, that'd be more so representative of her character there, right? And it'd be something where her character would be, like, formulated or formed off of that. So, or that'd be more so indicative of her character there. So there's that, and that's that out of the way, right? But beyond that, then we can kind of get, again, into, you know, what after then, right? So we know after then, again, you know, we actually don't really know that much. I mean, we know what happens to the other characters, right? And again, you know, we know about Headspace and how Headspace, as she forms her own Headspace, right? Again, right? And then we also know that, what's it called? We know kind of the other characters and how they swapped, right? But I guess the big thing is it's kind of unknown. It's really up for interpretation, as once, you know, we actually get a glimpse, if or when the mod comes out, once we actually get a glimpse of that kind of thing, again, right, or what we can more specifically see in her headspace, then we'd get a better idea of her character there, as right now it's pretty much just a Sunny clone from knowing that she self-isolates, recludes herself you know, isolates herself from everyone, and then goes into this, goes full Hikikomori mode for 4 years, right? So, again, it's just, so it's a bit odd, right? Even though she's the main character of this AU, right, who is centered around Omari, we don't even really know that much about her specifically. I guess unless you get into some real, like, kind of specific, like, headcanon-y, like, territory, I guess. We know, obviously, she feels guilty for killing Sunny. Because, again, that's blatantly just what happened. So, or not being able to save him if you look at the alternate incident. So, we do know that she feels guilty, right? Similar to how, again, Sunny felt guilty for killing her. And, again, I said for Mari, because mostly what Sunny feels guilty for is, because, again, I even say this in my Is Sunny Guilty video. He doesn't absolve himself of his guilt until he tells the truth. He doesn't become a good person until then. Because most of what Sunny's, again, what would you call it, guilt, and most of his traumas relate to the fact that he covered up her death. You know, that's not a normal thing. You know, you're a psychopath to do that, right? But obviously that was Basil, so, but that's getting off topic. But Mari, we know, again, you know, for her it was arguably worse having killed Sunny there, right? Or not being able to save him. Because, again, even though, obviously, she didn't cover up his death, at least unless you take the burial interpretation, which is way worse than what we actually got then, because it just made it seem like he disappeared, you know, fell off the face of the earth. But for her, right, something where, again, being an older sister, you know, supposed to protect your younger sibling, right? And then also your younger sibling being more reclusive and, like, I guess, what would you call it, recluded and, like, more, what would you call it? There was a better term I had for that earlier. Being more, damn, I can't think of, God damn it, I hate when I can't think of these fucking words. Him being more, again, right, reclusive and, like, again, introverted there. So she, even if it wasn't a killing, even if it was just her not being able to save him, she wouldn't really know what he would want out of her, as opposed to Sunny, who kind of knew, it seemed like that, he knew that she wanted him to kind of accept what happened and then tell the truth to his friends there, right? So, again, coming from his older sister there. So, arguably, it's worse, what's it called? Mari just either killing Sunny or not being able to save him versus Sunny, the inverse to Mari. But, obviously, most of, again, what the issue with Sunny was him covering up her death. But, so at least, again, in terms of then bringing that back to the Omari AU, right, is that we know that she feels guilty there, even if you take the manipulative, psychopathic, you know, perfectionist approach. So regardless, she feels guilty, and that's, again, what stems the whole Omari AU. And I guess the interesting part is, and this is actually kind of where I'm gonna, well, I'm not gonna end the video, but this kind of gonna be where I end off the Omari analysis, is there's really not much to go off of, because we really need to kind of see her headspace more in depth before we can go over her character, like, seriously. I guess, since, again, it's just, she's only swapped with Sunny, so pretty much we know that, just that she feels guilty and that she recludes, self-isolates, and that's it. But I'd say the big thing for Mari is, again, you know, whether or not she actually does, in fact, self-isolate and, you know, reclude herself for those 4 years. Again, goes for Hikikomori, if it follows the same timeline or sequence of events in the original game. Because my saying was that if she ends up calling the ambulance and just ends up doing that, I don't see that as realistic. I'm going to be honest. I don't think she'd go for Hikikomori for 4 years. Granted, if she buried him, I could see that being the case. But, and even in, you know, the alternate incident, I don't see that happening. And that's kind of the issue there. So, it kind of depends on, and bring this back to the Omari AU, because if or when that comes out, right, you know, that'd be like the only, I guess, quote-unquote official source for the AU. But again, it's something to where it's like, again, it pretty much comes down to how that would end up working out. Because even, again, I even talked about the amnesia interpretation, that being a really good, again, it doesn't follow the timeline sequence events of the original, but that'd be a really good story to be told. So it all kind of comes down to what, pretty much, you know, Mari's interpretation kind of comes down to what story is told in the Omari AU mod, right? Because what that comes down to is that we just need more info, headspace. We need to see how that story will go. Because, again, she just swaps with Sunny, so we just know that she feels guilty and feels trauma there, right? We don't really know much more than that. In fact, we know more about her in the original, which isn't even that much to begin with, right? But I guess the big thing there will be, again, unlike the other characters, where you can kind of, again, you know, they'll go through the swap and you can kind of, like, the next video I'll make will be on Sunny, right? And that one will probably be a bit bare bones, because I'll be going over, what's it called, again, because he's obviously takes Mari's place in the Omari AU. So I'll go over Sunny there. But the other 4 characters, Basil, Aubrey, Kel, and then Hero, there will be more to them, and their videos will most likely be longer. But again, just for this, right, you know, kind of, again, you can only really do so much. And I guess to end this off, again, comparing contrast and how it impacts the story, I mean, obviously, you know, I kind of went over that, right? So Mari switches with Sunny. How that impacts or changes the story is, again, right, besides being the whole reason for the character swaps, right? You know, again, because Sunny dying causes the characters, again, to do, you know, different things as opposed to Mari dying. And, you know, pretty much take different places. And Sunny meant, you know, differently to each character, just as Mari, or at least compared to Mari. But it's also something to where, again, we see, the big thing being, and how I think it impacts the story, the big thing being there, I don't see Mari going full Hikikomori and fully self-isolating, recluding herself for 4 years. I just don't see that being the case, unless, again, you go the burial route, which is then a whole nother, like, level, right? Again, because besides the incident playing out in multiple ways, I just don't see Mari doing that. That's how I think it impacts the story. Again, I just don't see her doing that. And I guess, I don't know, we'll kind of see there, because we need to kind of know or learn more about the story before we can fully get into at least her character. But as for how that impacts the story, and again, it's also, besides feeling the guilt and trauma from killing her younger brother, again, I talked about how Sunny was kind of the glue that held the group together, as they, in a sense, you know, the group kind of formed around Sunny, as him and Basil were kind of the most, I guess, introverted, shy, and like timid people there. So their friend groups, like, again, they'll protect them, right, and then support them there. So him kind of getting taken out, right, again, it's I'd say, again, and I said it was worse than Mari getting taken out, because again, I even talked about how Mari kind of just used the group to go on dates with Hero, right? But again, Sunny, like, seemed to actually, the group seemed to be very important to him there, right? The gang. So that, in the knowledge of that, again, seems like it had more of an impact, right? So, but again, the big thing being, we just need to see how the story will take place, because the big thing that I think will impact it, right? I just don't see Mari going full Hikikomori for 4 years. I don't think it's in character for her, unless you go the burial route, which I think is highly unlikely. But at least in terms of that, I think that's pretty much all I have. And I guess which one is better? I mean, I'm going to be honest. Unless we see, I can't really make a call. For now, I'm going to say Omori again, because the big thing there being, I think they did Mari's character really well in Omori. Again, between, you know, dream world interpretation, you know, the real world, right? What we got, the glimpses of her that we got in the real world, right? I think they did her character really well in Omori, right? In fact, she's my favorite character, right? Favorite living character is Aubrey, but favorite overall character is Mari, right? Again, I think they did her character extremely well there. I think it was, like, the perfect amount of, like, you know, what would you call it? It was the perfect amount of, like, exposure and interaction with her character in the dream world, and then also with what we got in the real world. And then eventually when we learned the truth. So I'm going to say I like her character in Omori better, but the big thing being coming now is we really need to see kind of the direction they take with her character in the Omari AU mod, right? In the Omari mod, because that'll be the only quote-unquote, like, official source there for that. So once we get that out, we can go more in depth, you know, once we see her go through Headspace, once we see her kind of react to, again, you know, once we see, like, what happens in the real world if it follows the same timeline sequence of events. So again, this video was a bit dry, I guess. The next one will probably be going over Sunny. The more interesting videos, right, will be going over the other 4 characters. Basil, Aubrey, Kel, and Hero, right? Those 4 are going to be more interesting, right? You know, Sunny and Mari are going to be a bit bare bones, because we really kind of need to see the mod before we can go over their interpretation. But again, right, the other 4, yeah, those will be more interesting. But I don't think I really have anything else, so I'm going to end it here. So, yep, that's it for this one. See you in the next one.